name is David Benkof. I'm passionate about Philip Roth, and I am so evangelical about him that I give away books when I teach Philip Roth. There are books on the chairs. Big fan of Philip Roth. I've read about 15 of his novels. He is not only the finest American Jewish writer. While he was alive, he was virtually by consensus the best living American writer. There was a survey of kind of literati, the most important literary folks in the United States, and 75% of them said that the best living American writer was Philip Roth. You're welcome to take a book. I'll tell you at the end under what conditions you get to keep it. Now we're going to look at one of the 5 short stories in Goodbye Columbus and 5 short stories. These stories, at least 4 of them, are frequently anthologized. As a matter of fact, if you showed me a book of American, not American Jewish, a book of American short stories, I would bet $100 that one of them will be a Philip Roth short story from this collection. They're funny, they're clever, they explore American Jewish identity, but they also say something about America, and we're going to look at a terrific one tonight. Now, I'm going to summarize the plot, but I've also given you, inside your booklet, a summary of each of the stories we're doing. Most importantly, the one in here about Eli the Fanatic. You're welcome to read this as we go. Some symbols and quotes from it. And then if you are not able to read Goodbye Columbus by tomorrow, but want to know what it's about, there's a 1-page summary of Goodbye Columbus. And again, some quotes and some symbols. So this booklet can be very useful to you. It also might be useful to take it home and help you decide what the next thing you want to read is. But before we start, I want to just give you a basic summary of what Eli the Fanatic is about. It's a great work of literature because it explores themes of American Jews in conflict with each other and asks the question, who's a fanatic? So, Eli Peck is an American Jewish lawyer who is hired by the local Reformed Jewish community to kick out the new yeshiva that has moved to town. It's a yeshiva filled with Holocaust survivors, and the Jewish community has just begun to integrate with the local Protestants, and they're very nervous that these yeshiva guys with their long coats and their black hats are going to embarrass them and make it harder for them to succeed in their activities as members of the community. So Eli goes and he talks to the rabbi, Tzuref, and we're going to look at some of what that happens. And Rabbi Tzuref he's alienating, but he's also seductive to Eli. And Eli goes home, and he still gets pressure from the local local Jewish community in the town of Woodenton. Philip Roth's names are almost always symbolic. His Jewish community is wooden. So the local Jewish community of Woodenton, and they keep saying, oh, he's crazy, do this, do that. And he, little by little, starts to wonder who exactly the fanatics are. And on your handout, these are fanatic excerpts. It says the Oxford Dictionary definition of fanatic. I chose Oxford Dictionary because of where we are, and not the American Heritage. And it says, a person filled with excessive and single-minded zeal, especially for an extreme religious or political cause. And the Reformed Jews of Woodenton were sending Eli to attack those, to expel those fanatical Jews of the yeshiva. And in the middle of the story, Eli is wondering, well, who's the fanatic? And little by little, he is seduced. We'll look at some of the excerpts, but he exchanges his coat for that of one of the chassids, and he wears the chassid's clothing, which a lot of people consider an act of mental illness, and he has a history of mental illness, but he feels like he's finally sane. And at the end, all of his neighbors think Eli is the fanatic, but it's pretty clear that Roth doesn't. One of the nice things about Roth is the symbols and imagery in his work are very much at the surface. So you don't have to scratch very deep. You don't have to have a PhD in literature in order to find really meaningful and interesting and important things, especially in these initial short stories. Actually, let me ask, who has learned Roth with me before? Okay, a lot of you. How about, who has learned the conversion of the Jews with me earlier? Okay, a lot of you. That is a remarkable story in terms of every other word. It's a 20-page story, and every other word, and you'll see some of it in the booklet, has some kind of symbolism or significance beyond what it looks like at the first reading. The odds are at least 50% that by the time I leave this room, I will have found a symbol or an image that I had never noticed before, even though I've read this story at least 50 times. So it's so deep, and you might catch, happened when I did the conversion of the Jews and Defender of the Faith so far, you may catch something that I had never seen, before. So that's one of my favorite things about this. Now, Roth is sometimes criticized. Oh, your writing is too pat. Those symbols are too obvious. If you were a better writer, it would be more difficult to deconstruct the stuff that you're writing. And by the way, later books, that is true. But the fact is, we're not all graduate students in English. So it's nice that we're able, with some pieces of American Jewish literature, to find stuff without digging very deep. Who was at my session about cabaret last night? Oh, wow, I'm getting a following. I like that.
That's why we met.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're here. But you noticed in cabaret that there's a lot of symbols and stuff in there that, it's there. You don't really have to Joel Gray is holding a staff. He's the devil. What's the staff? Oh, it's like the devil has a pitchfork. It's not that difficult, but once you're looking for it, and once somebody tells you, it's hard to unsee it because it's there. So we're going to look for some of those things together. I really believe that virtually every image he chooses is deliberate. Now, I have constructed this series of Philip Roth conversations, this Limmud, around the 4 sons from the Passover Seder. Defender of the Faith is about a completely assimilated American Jew who really has to reach back very far to his memories of his grandmother for a Jewish identity to bubble up. Then the Simple Son was Conversion of the Jews, in which Ozzie Friedman sort of looks at the Jewish world and says, I don't get this. Something's wrong here. That's the Simple Son. By the way, I don't think Roth did this on purpose. I was just looking for a way to organize the sessions so that I could do 4 instead of 1, and Limmud would approve the idea. Anyway, but I think it works. This is the wicked son because Eli Peck, you'll see some of the ridiculous things that he says. The wicked son, somebody tell me the paragraph about the wicked son on Passover. Why is he wicked? What does he say or do?
What does this mean to you?
What does this mean to you? This isn't me, to you. And that's what Eli Peck is doing. You'll see in this story that it's all about his separating, at least at first, and his community separating himself from the yeshiva, and it's authentic, maybe authentic, is that a fair word to use? Authentic Jewish situation. So I consider that the wicked son. And the last one, the wise son, is super easy. The main character is Neil Klugman. What does Klugman mean? Clever man, right? So wise son. I don't have to spend any more time on that other than telling you it's a brilliant story. It's about, and we're doing it tomorrow at noon, it is about a lower middle class Jew, that's Neil Klugman, who works in a library, wise son, who falls in love with a wealthy Jewish woman. and it's about their romance and about the challenges of that cross-class relationship, and it's about race, and it's about love, and it's about sex, that sometimes will get people to come, and it is just a lovely, nicely written story with a lot of the same kinds of symbolism. I literally thought, you know what, I want to write a book. I want to write a book of commentary on Goodbye Columbus, like a Rashi, where every couple of words will tell you what I see. I could do that. And I would put it online if it wouldn't be a copyright violation. I really could do a good annotated version of Goodbye Columbus, and I don't have a literary background. I have the background probably of everybody in the room, and maybe less. Anybody with an English major or beyond? Yes, okay, so some of you probably know more than I do, certainly know more than I do about literary analysis and have read more fiction. Just what I do is looking at culture. Those of you who were at the cabaret session, I don't have a degree in film theory, and well, I love musicals and I love movies. That's not my background. My skill is helping students look at a chunk of culture, especially American Jewish culture, and relate it, dig deeper in it, figure out what's there and relate it to them. That's what I do, and that's what we're going to do tonight with this amazing short story. First excerpt. And I want a Ted. I want a Ted and an Eli. Ted is one of the people who sent Eli to go confront the rabbi. Eli is Eli the Fanatic. So can I get a Ted? Volunteer to read the Ted part? You'll be Ted. And I want an Eli. Eli the Fanatic. And Eli, go ahead. So the phone rang.
I'm not doing an American accent.
Totally, I'm doing an American accent. The phone rang.
Hello?
That was very good for an American accent. Eli said. Eli.
Okay. Eli, Ted. So? So nothing. Who is Tzuref? He's an American guy? No, a DB.
Displaced person from Europe.
German. And the kids? From Europe too. He teaches them. What subjects? I don't know. And the guy with the hat, you saw the guy with the hat? Yes, he was sleeping. Eli, he sleeps with the hat? He sleeps with the hat. Goddamn fanatics.
Ted said.
This is the 20th century, Eli. Now it's the guy with the hat. Pretty soon all the little yeshiva boys will be spilling down into town. Next thing, they'll be after our daughters. Michelle and Debbie wouldn't look at them. Then?
Eli mumbled.
You've got nothing to worry about, Teddy.
And he hung up. All right, what's funny about this?
What?
What's funny about this little exchange?
This is terrible.
What's terrible? Okay.
They're talking like fascists.
Okay.
They're talking like bigots.
Okay.
About worried about Jews bringing the house prices down.
Is
terrible.
Eli talking like a bigot? When he says, the next thing they'll be after our daughters, I'm pretty sure he's kidding. Right? Oh, that thing they'll be after our daughters. And then Ted doesn't get the joke. Ted doesn't get the joke. And he said, oh, Michelle and Debbie, which are the most assimilated names you could get, right? Oh, Michelle and Debbie wouldn't look at them. So he's up, and you've got nothing to worry about anytime. So they're not both.
No.
Eli has started to be pulled in and started to be sympathetic, not entirely, but he's exasperated by this call
This is what
from
the
Ted.
Europeans used to say. Lock up your daughters, the Jews are coming.
The Jews are coming, okay. And this whole thing, what subjects? I don't know. He sleeps with the hat. I mean, the whole kind of thing that they're so alien and they're so fanatical. The other thing, there's a moment in this story, and I don't think we have it quoted. There's a moment in the story, and I think it's in your booklet, where Tzuref says, this is the 20th century. Eli says, this is the 20th century. And Tzuref says, for the Goyim, maybe. For me, the 57th. He's a very wise guy, wise man, Tzuref is, and he's able to kind of show Eli the limitations of his attitudes in a very slow and deliberate manner, and Eli gets so frustrated he thinks he's talking in riddles. But what he's really doing is talking kind of Talmudically and getting Eli to look at what he's doing.
So you have to understand from 57.
Oh, 56, 760. Right now it's 57,
The
70,
Jewish New-
but at the time it was 56, 90, whatever. The Jewish
I-
calendar has several years on us, right, on Westerners. Okay, so this is the letter after Eli had a negative experience meeting with Rabbi Tzuref. And by the way, what's the second word of this letter?
This,
Okay, that's a way to get started. The kind of disrespect, you know, yeah. Okay, so now brace yourself for what's going to happen in the second paragraph of this letter that I'm going to read. Dear Mr. Tzuref, our meeting this evening seems to me inconclusive. I don't think there's any reason for us not to be able to come up with some sort of compromise that will satisfy the Jewish community of Woodenton and the yeshiva and yourself. It seems to me that what most disturbs my neighbors are the visits to town by the gentlemen in the black hat, suit, etc. Woodenton is a progressive suburban community whose members, after all, whose members, both Jewish and Gentile, are anxious that their families live in comfort, beauty, and serenity. This is, after all, the 20th century, and we do not think it too much to ask that the members of our community dress in a manner appropriate to the time and place. Woodenton, as you may not know, has long been the home of well-to-do Protestants. It is only since the war that Jews have been able to buy property here, and for Jews and Gentiles to live beside each other in amity. For this adjustment to be made, both Jews and Gentiles alike have had to give up some of their more extreme practices in order not to threaten or offend the other. Certainly such amity is to be desired. Perhaps if such conditions had existed in pre-war Europe, the persecution of the Jewish people of which you and these 18 children have been victims could not have been carried out with such success. In fact, might not have been carried out at all. Okay. What? Yeah, please.
So presumably, this is Eli as a character and on behalf of the Jewish community there. Presumably Roth is educated enough to know that actually Germany was a very assimilated...
Dear Lord, he was
society, you know.
educated. And more than that, these guys are not from Germany. They're from Eastern Europe. It's
Yeah.
pretty, they speak Yiddish, they're absolutely not from Germany. But Roth, you'll see as we go on, Roth is not on the side of the town of Woodenton. He probably doesn't daven at a shul, but if he does, he davens at the Reform shul, liberal shul in Woodenton. He's not with the Orthodox, but it doesn't matter. This is satire, and I think, and you can disagree with me later, but the object of the satire is going after the hypocrisy of the citizens of Woodenton. And I have a pet peeve about the word hypocrisy because people use it all the time to mean inconsistency. And it's not inconsistency. Hypocrisy is applying standards to other people that you don't apply to yourself. And the Jews of Woodenton are attacking fanaticism, and they can't see their own. So Roth is definitely with the yeshiva. And how can he not be when he writes something like this that is so patently offensive? It is utterly offensive from the mouth of the community, from the mouth of Eli, not from the mouth of Roth. It is offensive that, and this happens elsewhere in the book, in Defender of the Faith, there's a line about, they say Hitler himself was half a Jew, right? And there's another place in these stories where the suggestion is that the Jews brought it upon themselves. And so it's sort of a theme. There's actually a lot of stuff in here that I consider to be intertextual. And if I do ever write my Rashi on Goodbye Columbus, I'll point that out and you guys can read them. But tonight we're mostly going to focus on this story itself. So there's a moment where the main thing that bugs the local Jewish community of Woodenton is there is a chassid, he's about Eli's age, who wanders through town and he picks up shoes at the shoe store. And he goes and gets the eggs that the yeshiva needs. And he has a little note, he doesn't speak English, he turns it in and he says, these are the sizes of shoes that we need. And he's seen about in his long coat and his hat, and it's especially the hat that bugs him. You could see that in this conversation before, right? Ted is like, the hat, right? And so it's especially the hat that bugs them. So Eli goes back to Mr. Tzuref and very reasonably complains about the man with the hat. Before we go on, let's just do a little bit of the symbolism of some of what's in here. I told you about the name Woodenton, maybe given away here, but if you haven't read it yet, what might Tzuref, so it might be trouble. Tzuref. What else? What is Hebrew litzaref? To join. There could be something about joining. And so I think I have here also Tzuref is to maybe to heal, but rifah means like an olive means to heal, right? Doctor, to heal. So there are all kinds of things going on in that name. Eli, in the Bible, who is Eli?
The Shiloh, it's the guy who,
What's his job title?
it's the priest.
And prophet and judge. He's all three. He's from the book of Judges. He's all three, which is interesting. And if you're a judge, not that different from being a lawyer, right? And his mental illness here could be related to prophecy. He's sort of going above and beyond and seeing things that others don't. So he's he's got all these rules from the Bible. Then we have and we'll look at this as we talk. The story is filled with black and white imagery, and it becomes clear in the story that black is authentic religiosity to Roth in this story, and white is not. All right, so Eli says to Tzuref, we'll just get the guy a new suit. It's not that hard to solve this problem. We'll get him a new suit. So I need, I'm going to use the same Eli, but now I need a Rabbi Tzuref, that gentleman right there. So Eli, excerpt C.
Man to get a new suit.
That's all he's got.
So you told me.
Eli said.
So I told you, so you know.
It's not an insurmountable obstacle, Mr. Tzuref. We have stores.
For that too.
On Route 12, a Robert Hall?
You take away the one thing a man's got.
Not take away, replace.
But I tell you, he has nothing. Nothing. You have that word in English? Nick? Gornish?
Yes, Mr. Tzuref, we have the word.
A mother and a father? Oh no.
Tzuref said.
Sorry.
No, you're right. Tzuref said.
What? I'm not sorry.
There's a mother and a father, and oh, you're right, Tzuref.
Okay. No, a wife, no, a baby, a little 10-month-old baby. No, a village full of friends, a synagogue, where he knew the feel of every seam under your pants, where with your eyes closed you could smell the cloth of the Torah.
So Tzuref pushed out of his chair, stirring a breeze that swept Eli's letter to the floor. At the window, he leaned out and looked beyond Woodenton. When he turned, he was shaking a finger at Eli.
And a medical experiment they performed on him yet. That leaves nothing, Mr. Peck, absolutely nothing.
I misunderstood.
No news reached Woodenton?
About the suit, Mrs. Tzuref? I thought he couldn't afford another.
This is a little confusing, all right? When Eli says, I misunderstood, he's talking about the suit. He misunderstood what Tzuref said when he said that's all he's got. But we'll see later that he really still didn't seek in. And then, when Tzuref says, no news reached Woodenton, he's saying, you misunderstood what happened to us, which is a little bit of a rebuke. Where were you for us? You misunderstood. No news. How could you not understand? You didn't hear? No news reached Woodenton? About the suit, Mr. Tzuref. Let's go with that.
The suit, Mrs. Tzuref? I thought he couldn't afford another.
He can't.
They were right where they'd begun.
Mr. Tzuref,
Eli demanded.
here.
He smacked his hand to his billfold. So Eli is smacking his wallet. Here, we can afford it. Here, I'll pay for it.
Exactly.
Tzuref said, smacking his own breast. Exactly. Right?
Then we'll buy him one.
Eli crossed to the window and taking Tzuref by the shoulders, pronounced each word slowly. We. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Sure, no, please.
We will pay for it. All right?
Pay? What? Diamonds?
Eli raised a hand to his inside pocket, then let it drop. Oh, stupid. Tzuref, father to 18, not really, those are the 18 orphans that he teaches. Father to 18, 18, it's not 17, it's not 19, 18 means high. Yeah, 18 means high. All right, right? Okay, good, he's repenting. Father to 18 had smacked not what lay under his coat, but deeper, under the ribs.
Oh,
Eli said. He moved away along the wall.
the suit is all he's got then.
Okay, so here you see Eli starting to shift from representing the Jews of Woodenton to starting to understand what's going on and having some empathy and some sympathy and no longer feeling like his loyalties are to the assimilated community. He's not sure where his loyalties are. Right. But then he goes back and he has to deal with the local community who still gives some of these same attitudes. And I keep giving you these examples because I think they're funny. So listen to this. Here we have Ted again. Ted? People? It was you, right?
Oh, it was me, yeah, sorry. Right. People? Eli, we've been through this and through this. We're not just dealing with people. These are religious fanatics is what they are, dressing like that.
Okay, so Roth is saying, who's the religious fanatic? Ted is a religious fanatic, right? He's the one who's being fanatical right now, and listen to what he says.
What I'd really like to find out is what goes on up there. I'm getting more and more skeptical, Eli, and I'm not afraid to admit it. It smells like a lot of hocus pocus, abracadabra stuff to me.
Okay, what is the etymology of the word abracadabra? Avare kedaber. I will make as I speak. So it's Hebrew. It's a lot of abracadabra stuff. Who thinks that Roth knew that when he wrote that? Who thinks Roth kind of accidentally used the word abracadabra? Yeah, maybe, it's possible. But it still works, still got something really deep there. A lot of hocus pocus, right? Keep going.
Guys like Harry, you know, they think and they're afraid to admit what they're thinking. I'll tell you. Look, I don't even know about this Sunday school business. Sundays I drive my oldest kid all the way to Scarsdale to learn Bible stories. And you know what she comes up with? This Abraham in the Bible was going to kill his own kid for a sacrifice. She gets nightmares from it, for God's sake. You call that religion? Today, a guy like that, they'd lock him up. This is an age of science, Eli. They size people's feet with an X-ray machine, for God's sake. They've disproved all that stuff, Eli, and I refuse to sit by and watch it happening on my own front lawn.
Okay, interesting to me. Ted has never heard of the story of the binding of Isaac. Well, it tells you something about what kind of Jewish life he's led. He does send his daughter to Hebrew school, and then she comes home with what to him is a shocking story, right? And is there an Akedah? Yeah, there is in the conversion of the Jews, so I said that intertextuality. But in this story, is there any kind of sacrificing children or almost sacrificing children because God said so? Do you see anything there? So there are children, and the town of Woodenton is trying to hurt them, trying to punish them, trying to get them away. And who's trying to stop them eventually? Eli. What does El mean?
My God.
El means my God. I don't know. That could be totally wrong, my interpretation. I'm certain that of all the interpretations I'm giving you tonight, at least 10% are wrong and maybe 50%. But you won't get the interesting right ones if you don't make any wrong ones. So you really have to stretch out and let your mind wander and see what you can come up with. They've disproved all that stuff, Eli, and I refuse to sit by and watch it happening on my front lawn. And Eli.
Nothing's happening on your front lawn, Teddy. You're exaggerating. Nobody's sacrificing their kids.
You're damn right, Eli. I'm not sacrificing mine. You'll see when you have your own what it's like.
Oh, by the way, his wife is pregnant.
All the place is a hideaway for people who can't face life. It's a matter of needs. They have all these superstitions, and why do you think? Because they can't face the world, because they can't take their place in society. That's no environment to bring kids up in, Eli.
Okay, so what does Ted think the yeshiva should do, please?
I mean, I kind of like scrambled through the thing there.
Okay.
Is Ted Jewish?
Yes.
Okay.
He's a member of the local Jewish community. And he's part of the top of the team that say, Eli, we've hired you as our lawyer. Go to Tzuref and say the zoning laws say, and they try to get him out.
What do they do in their Jewish community then?
What are they doing there? They have to settle somewhere. They were the yeshiva was looking for a place, and they bought.
No, Ted. What does Ted do? I mean, he's like surprised and shocked at everything.
Yes, he did not live in Woodenton. He lived probably in some assimilated Jewish community, and he was excited to hear that this lovely suburban community was finally allowing Jews to move in. Which, by the way, the worst decade in American history in terms of anti-Semitism was the 1930s, which a lot of people find weird because, anti-Semitism increases or it becomes less as time goes on. No, we had a decade, and it was the 30s with more official and with more unofficial anti-Semitism. So you can see how, after the war, going from this restricted covenant, Jews couldn't live there. After the war, finally Jews could. Oh, it's a lovely suburban community. We're going to move in. And they're there, they've settled, and suddenly the yeshiva shows up, and they're like, Eli, we're hiring you to get rid of.
But I just want to say, because I understand your question, because I picked this up from a different book I read called The Temple Bombing by Melissa Fay Green. Some of the reform communities in the USA, and I don't think we've had this phenomenon in the UK, were so assimilated that they tried almost to be like not Jewish. I mean, they were a synagogue, but some of them, like they had you said Hebrew classes, but actually they had classes where they didn't teach Hebrew to the children. They didn't light candles on Friday night. They didn't teach Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
It was just kind of barely Jewish at all.
Yeah.
Because they were so worried about integrating.
But by the way, the temple bombing, what's the name of the temple?
The temple.
The temple,
Yeah.
right? So, I mean, it's not anything in Hebrew. They called the temple, you go and you look, it's actually a scene in Driving Miss Daisy. You go and you see the wall of the temple where it's engraved the name of the temple, and it says the temple. So it's the best word for that is generic. Literally, the best word for that is generic. But let's go back and take a look at what does Ted want, demand, expect these displaced persons who are fresh out of Nazi Germany to do when they arrive in America.
Be like him.
How?
To stop wearing the black clothes, to stop practicing their Judaism,
Yeah.
and to be like their Protestant neighbours.
Okay, so I can't figure out by what process he would expect would happen. Somebody's got to teach them English. Is he going to teach them English? Are they going to invite him to their temple and let them, right? So I don't even know what he wants. He probably doesn't know what he wants. He just doesn't like what he has, and he wants to get rid of them. Eli starts to have what appears to be a nervous breakdown, right? He starts wandering around town in the black hat and the coat, and he has had nervous breakdowns before. And at the end of the story, let me have this in here. No. Right. But there is a line in here, line 14, where he says, but if you chose to be crazy, then you weren't crazy. It's when you didn't choose. No, he wasn't flipping. And Roth agrees with him. Roth thinks he's not crazy. He's making a choice to it, even if he's not converting to Hasidism, he's making a statement about religiosity and about fanaticism, and he goes to see his newborn baby, and he's dressed in the coat, and everybody's like, what's going on? And then the orderlies come, and they hold his arms, and they stick a needle in his vein. And I'll read you the last line. Eli the Fanatic. Oh, the last line of the book, so it can really make it easier to find. Okay, Rabbi, okay. He listened. It was a very soothing word, that okay, everything's going to be okay. His feet seemed to have left the ground some, and it did, because they lifted him up. As he glided away from the window, the bassinet, the babies, okay, easy Dubba does it, everything's all right. But he rose suddenly, as though out of a dream, and flailing his arms, screamed, I'm the father! But the window disappeared. In a moment, they tore off his jacket. It gave so easily in one yank. Remember, this is the jacket of the chassid. Tore off his jacket in one yank. Yank means American, right? Everything has a double meaning in this book, right? Took you guys too long to answer that. You guys have to be more on it.
What does it mean?
What? Yank means American. The Yankees, right? In one yank, then a needle slid under his skin. The drug calmed his soul, but it did not touch down where the blackness had reached. And blackness is not bad. In this story, blackness is authentic religiosity. There's a moment where, like a Jehovah's Witness, a black Jehovah's Witness comes and leaves literature. The story uses black to represent good, authentic, as opposed to the religiosity of Michel and Debbie. So go ahead and look over the quotes, and somebody raise their hand and tell me a quote that they see that they think is interesting that maybe I'll comment on a little bit. So if you see one that you think is interesting. So Tzuref said, Shalom and good luck. By the way, Shalom is really interesting because at a couple of times when Eli starts to say Shalom, it's more evidence of either his real religiosity or his mental illness, depending on who's listening. So, Shalom and good luck, Tzuref says to him. I know what it is to have children, meaning he knows that he's having a baby. Shalom, Tzuref whispered, and with the whisper, the candles went out. The yeshiva was not well lit. With the whisper, the candles went out. But the instant before, the flames leaped into Tzuref's eyes, and Eli saw it was not luck Tzuref wished him at all. what was Tzuref wishing him? And by the way, in American symbolism, wishing and candles, right, that's what birthdays are about. Okay? But what is Tzuref wishing if not luck? Think about luck. Think about luck.
Like luck random.
Huh?
Luck is more kind of random.
Yeah. Do Jews believe in luck? Not really. Jews believe in divine intentions. Jews believe in blessing, not luck. So he very well may be giving him a blessing, right? But Eli, it didn't blow past Eli, and throughout the story, some of what Tzuref is doing, Eli is just totally unaware. Here, Eli is already starting to realize what Tzuref is doing when he talks to him. Let's do one more. Let's do 9. When one of the people in the community, or it might be his wife, said, Eli, what happened? And Eli heard himself say, so it's not Eli said, Eli heard himself say, what happened? Happened. Which is exactly how Tzuref speaks. So little by little, Roth is showing him transforming and becoming what might be a fanatic or might just be legitimate and real. What happened? Happened. And he heard himself and probably was like, what is happening to me? He heard himself saying it. 5 minutes for questions or comments.
When did you write all these stories? Did you write the stories all at the same time?
Over the course of about 3 years, maybe 2 years.
Young, wasn't he,
24!
and you wrote them all around at the same time.
Well, that's part of what's amazing is somebody I was talking to about Nemesis. This was his first book, it was by Columbus. His last book was Nemesis. This was 58. Nemesis was 2011. Philip Roth had a 5-decade career consistently writing excellent books. As a matter of fact, in that second to last decade, he wrote Sabbath Theater, Plot Against America. He won the Pulitzer for American Pastoral. He wrote The Human Stain, which is brilliant. He wrote all these books towards the end of his career. This was great. Portnoy's Complaint was great. Shakespeare did not have a comparable career in terms of length with quality works on both ends. It's just, nobody does this. Yes?
You've got Eli and Fanatic in the back of this blue book. Is that the whole, is it a short story? Is
Yeah.
that the whole book? Or
Goodbye Columbus is a novella,
Yeah.
and there are 5 short stories.
So that's the whole
4
story.
of them are good. Yeah.
That's the whole story. It's not a clip of a longer book.
No, that's the whole story. It is a 50-page story.
Okay.
And 4 of them are good. The one you can't tell a man by a song he sings is like a, I don't know, 4 out of 10. Epstein I would give like a 7 out of 10. And the ones I'm using here, Defender of the Faith and the Fanatic, I'm going to put at like a 9.5. And the Conversion of the Jews, we're talking 10. So this stuff, I see some nods. This stuff is just extraordinary. And I'm putting Goodbye Columbus also at the 9.5.
When was the story set? Because to me it was like the 50s. You're saying you're sort of implying it straight after the war.
I think it's, yeah, I mean, because the boys are young enough that, it's just my sense that, and it says after World War II in the story. I don't know the year. I think it's late 40s. I don't think it's 46. But
It's not yet.
The sentences that we read the excerpt when the Teddy says they haven't experienced any life, that kind of thing. They don't know about the world. We're talking about people who have just come out of the Holocaust, and the section you read just before talked about all they lost and what they have, and he thinks he knows the world.
The world. Oh, that's a very good point. And I'm sure Roth was once again being ironic. Right there. Totally being ironic. I come to about 8 to 10 Limmuds a year. I thoroughly enjoy teaching, whether it's Limmud or other events. If it's Limmud, I have a budget. You don't have to fly me in. If you want me to come and teach at your Limmud, I can bring myself in, pay for my hotel, just give me students, and I'd be delighted to come. And I've got flyers if you want that, either for Limmud or for some other purpose to learn about my teaching. I thought this was really interesting. I learned some stuff. Wonderful story, and you were a wonderful participatory Limmud session. So thanks, guys.
Thank you.